All right, welcome back to Genius. So in this session, in this chapter, we'll be talking about Python basics. Let us get to understand Python basics. And in this section, we'll be talking about variables and data types. There is no way we can work without variables and data types. In computer, the definition they gave us about computer when we started learning computer was computer is a machine that processes data, outputs data. You give it data. I've even forgotten that definition. But the thing is that you give it data, it will process the data and it would output the data. So everything we do in computer programming, everything we do in coding, everything we do in writing software is we work with data. All right. So users will give us data. We'll fetch data from the database. We'll fetch data from APIs and we will process that data and give out the output to the user. All right. So we will be working with data all our life as software developers, as computer programmers. So we need to understand. All right. So what is a variable? All right. Now the thing is this, when you give computer your data, all right, let's say you're writing a program and a user gives you data or you get data from the database, you have to store it somewhere so that you can make use of it. If you don't store it somewhere, you keep on asking the user for that data every time. So when I give you data, you have to store it somewhere so that whenever you need it in your program, you can always reuse it. So that is basically what variables are. Variables are places we store our data temporarily in our program. If you want to store data permanently, you will store it in your database. But if you want to store data, that data, if you're just going to be using it just within your program, you don't need to store it in the database. So that data, where you store it in variables. Okay, so a variable is a name that stores a value in memory. Now, when the user gives you that data, you will store it in basically what we are doing is that we are storing it in computer's memory. So when you store it in computer's memory, you're going to give it a name so that you can use that name. That name is not identifier. Remember when we talked about identifiers? So we are using that name as a variable name. That variable name is an identifier. And we are using that name to identify the place we store that value in memory. Now, this identifier or this variable name is simply like the address. When you go to the post office, all right, every box have his own address. So when you put any letter in that box, all right, whoever has that address will come in there and take it. All right. So now when you store data in memory, you're going to give it a variable name, an identifier that you can use to identify it. So that name you're giving it is what you're uniquely using to identify it. So it is its own unique identifier. So whenever you now want to make use of that data, you will just call that variable name and Python would know that yes, you want to use this, you're calling this name, that means you want to use the data stored in that variable name. So Python will evaluate that variable name and get you the data that is stored in that variable. All right, but basically you're not storing the data in the variable. You're storing the data in computer's memory, but you're not using the variable name to identify that memory because now computer memory, they work in a way that they have addresses. So when you're now using variable name, it's like an address of the location where you stored the data. So when you call that variable name, Python would look for it because Python is going to attach the address to that name. So Python will look for it, go to the memory, fetch the data, and give it to you. All right. So unlike some other languages, Python does not require explicit type declaration. Okay, if you're coming from another language, okay, you will know that when you're something like C# or C++, okay, or Java, when you're writing variable, you have to indicate the data type explicitly. But for Python is a dynamically typed programming language. So you don't need to explicitly tell Python what the data type is. Python will figure it out. All you have to do is to give it the value. So when you give it the value, Python will infer it automatically. Python would figure it out automatically. So the type of the variable is inferred automatically. And when we mean type, every data has its own type. In computer science or in computer programming, every data has its type. All right. So just like every food has its own type. Rice is carbohydrate, if I'm correct. Beans is protein. Orange is a bit vitamin or something. You understand what I'm saying? So every data has its own type. So you do not need to declare variable types explicitly. All right, you do not need to do that. So let me show you what I mean. We'll go to our website. You know that our code editor is working. So now I have this Python code. So I'm just going to delete everything. All right. So what am I going to do here? I'm going to declare a variable, and I will call this variable um, um, first name. First name. And this first name is going to be Doe. All right. Sorry, John. All right. You can see, this is what I'm doing here is that I'm telling Python to store this value for me. See this John value? I'm telling Python to store it for me in memory. All right. Then I'm telling Python to say, okay, when you store this value, this data in memory, please, I want you to give it a unique identifier, first name, so that whenever I call first name, you're going to search for this value that you have stored in memory for me and give it to me. So the type of the data I'm storing right now is called string. This is a test value. So test values we call them string in Python. All right, so the kind of data I am storing in this memory is called a string data type. And I am using this name, this identifier, this variable name to uniquely identify it. So if I come and say, oh yeah, Python, I want you to print the value of this first name. If I tell Python to print the value, so Python will first of all go take this, first of all, check, is this first name a variable name? Yes, it is a variable name. Then it will now say, okay, that means since it is a variable name, it is representing the address of a memory location. So it will now take that address, go to the memory location of that address, then fetch the data that was stored in that memory location, and then give it to me. So if I run this thing, Python will print out John for me because that's what I stored in that memory location. So I hope you understand it, okay? So I did not explicitly give it the data type. Okay, let me show you something. Let me show you something. Okay. So if I'm to write maybe C sharp now, okay? Um, okay, let me take everything out here. Let me show you the same thing that we did here. Okay, so if I'm to do the same thing with C sharp, I will say string. Okay, sorry. It's been a long time I wrote a C sharp code. I will say string, and I will say first name. I hope I'm getting this correctly. It's been a long time I wrote C sharp code. So, but I think, do I have any error? This string should be highlighted. Sorry, it is. Okay, sorry. You see the difference, capital S and small s. So C sharp is also case sensitive. So, and you see the difference here. This is the way you declare variables in C sharp. This is the way you declare variables in C sharp. But in Python, we didn't do this. We didn't even put the semicolon. We didn't even put the data type. Here, we are explicitly telling C sharp the data type is string, and we are ending our statement with a semicolon. But in Python, it's not done that way. In Python, we don't give it the data type, and we don't end with semicolon. So Python would implicitly figure it out for us. So let me go back to Python. Okay, you can see the difference that we did not say string, just like we did with the way we did it in C sharp, and we did not end it with semicolon. All right, so this is Python's way of doing it. All right, so that is how we declare variable. Okay, now Python automatically assigns the type based on the value you assigned it. If you give it an integer, if you give it a number, Python will figure it out that it's a number. All right, so Python is dynamically typed, meaning you can change the type of a variable by assigning a new value. This is what we mean. If I go back to our browser, our website, right now, Python figures it out that I gave it a test value, which means the data type of this variable is a string. If I come back and say this first name, I am reassigning it, I will give it 98. Now, it is no longer, the data type is no longer a string. It is now an integer. So this is what we mean by it is static, it is dynamically typed. You can change the type of a variable at any time. But in C# or in Java or in C++, you cannot do this thing. You cannot reassign the data type. No. All right. So, but with Python, it is possible because it is dynamically typed. Variable names must start with a letter or an underscore and cannot be reserved keyword. We have seen this thing before. And how do you variable declaration? We have been doing this already. So you declare a variable and you assign. So here we said x is equal to 10. So x is a variable name and we are assigning the value 10, which is an integer. Here we are saying y is equal to 3.14. The data type here is float. So we have integer, we have float, we have string, we have boolean. So decimal numbers like this, 3.14, okay, the type is float. But for whole numbers like this one, s equal to 10, the type is integer. Now, name is equal to John with a string. Any value that is enclosed inside single quote or double quote, they are all strings. Okay, is a text value. Then it is active. We say equal to true. Now, true or false is a Boolean data type. We also showed you this thing in previous section. Okay. Now, if I say print s while name is active, all right. If we print this thing, we are going to get all these values. But their data type 10 is integer, 3.14 is float, and John enclosed in double quote is a text value, which is it is a string, and true is Boolean. So reassigning variables. After you have declared a variable and given it a value, you can reassign it with another value. So you can change the value of a variable at any given time. So let me show you again. Let me show you again. So now you can see I assigned John to this first name variable. And later on, I am changing it. I am giving it another value. So this is what we call reassignment. We can reassign the value of this variable. So this is what we call reassignment. And it is very, very valid in computer programming. Okay, so you can also assign multiple variable value. You can assign multiple variables. So look at it. You can assign multiple variables in a single line. So see, A, B, C is equal to 1, 2.5, hello. All right. And when you print, you're going to get this. But let me show you. Let me do more practical here. So let's say I have first name as age. All right. I have first name as John and I have age as 99, and I have salary. This person's salary, I have it as 777.9999. Okay. Now, I did this thing, these assignments, I did it in 3 lines. What if I want to do it on the same line? I can do it on the same line. So what I will do is this. I will say first name, comma, age, comma, salary is equal to. Then first name, what value do I want to give it? I want to give it John. All right. Age, what value? Then comma, what value do I want to give age? I want to give age 87. Then another comma. So what is the salary? The salary is 6666 point. Okay, you can see respectively, first name takes John, age takes 87, and salary takes this one. Okay, so I cannot, you see, I cannot take this guy off. Okay, I cannot take it off. So the same thing I achieved in 3 lines, I have done it in a single line. But look at the way I did it. I said first name, comma, age, comma, salary, comma. So these are variable names. Then I now said equal to, then John. This John goes to first name, comma, 87 goes to age, comma, the other 60, the other value goes to salary. So if I go on and print, I print first name, I print age, I print salary. If I run this code, I'm going to get the three of them, the three values. You can say I got John 87 and this other one. Okay, so this is what we call multiple variable assignment. Okay, or you can assign the same value to multiple values. So instead of me, you can say x equal to y. Now, if you want to, you have three variables and you want to assign one value to them. This is how you do it. So let's go back. Let's say I have, um, let's say I have a variable x. Okay, I have. Okay, let's do this. If I say x equal to 100, okay, y equal to 100, z, okay, let me just say a is equal to 100. Instead of me doing this, because I am assigning the same value to the three of them, instead of me to do this thing, what I could do is I could say x is equal to y and y is equal to a, and all of them are equal to 100. Do you understand it? This is, I am assigning the same value to the three of them. So I could now come here and say, and use them. I will say print x, y, and a for me. When I run this code, I'm going to get the three of them, 100, 100, 100. So I have a value and I'm assigning the same value to the three variables. Okay, so you can actually do this in Python. All right. So in case you get confused, please reach out to us, okay? So Python has several built-in data types. Here we are going to focus on four fundamental ones. So we have seen integer, we have seen float, we have seen string, and we have seen boolean. So integers are whole numbers, positive or negative, without a decimal point. I've already shown you that. Okay, so example is this: a is equal to 10. So the kind of data we are storing in a, all right, is a whole number. It can either be positive or a negative number, but it does not have a decimal point. So that is an integer. So this is a data type. Data type, type of that data. Do you understand it? A data type is just the type of the data. You have a data. What is the type of the data? All right, that is data type. So the data type of this 10 is integer. Okay, it can also be a negative number. And then when you say print type A, all right, this function, this type A, is printing the type of the data. So let's go to our website. Now, I will take everything out here. So if I say x is equal to 20, and I want to find the data type, what I will do is this. I will say, uh, I will say, I will say, let me print out the data type. I will use this. Okay, no, let me do this. The data type, let me call it type. Okay, so sorry, type is a keyword here. Let me just say data type. Okay, and if I say type, this function will take in the variable name. And if I now say print the value that is found in the data type. So look at what I'm doing here. I'm saying I'm creating a variable x and I'm assigning 20 as the data, as the value. Then I am now asking Python, please give me I want to know the data type of this my variable. So I will now use this type function, open the parentheses, put in the variable name inside of it, then it will return it and it will not store it in data type. Then we are now printing this data type variable. So when we run this thing now, you see this is the data type. The data type is integer. All right, it is an integer. So that is how you find the data type. If I put this thing in double quotes, the data type will change. It is no longer, because it is in double quote, it's no longer an integer. It is now a string. You can see it has changed. The class now is a string. If I say, instead of 20, if I say 20.88, now it is now a decimal number. The type is now float. Okay? All right. So you can see this is how you find the data type of the variable. Okay? So this integer supports arithmetic operations like plus, minus, multiplication. We are going to do all these things when we start talking about operations. So you can do 2 plus 2, 3 plus 2, you understand, because they are integer, they all support this. So we'll take a look at operators later on. So you can say S is equal to 7 modulus 2. Don't worry, 7 divided by 2. Now, you're going to get confused because this is not a normal division, but don't worry, when we get to operators, I will explain it. Okay? There's something we call integer division. Okay? I don't want to go into that, but when we get to operations, I will explain it. So we also have 7 modulus 2. You might not have seen these modulus before, but we'll talk about it later on. You can say 2, if you want to get the exponential of a number, you can actually do it here. So, but don't worry, we're going to talk about operators later on, okay? So let's talk about the next data type, which is a float. A float is a number that contains a decimal point, period. All right, any number, any data that contains decimal point like this is a float. So the data type is going to be float. Just like you saw when I changed 20 to 20.88, the data type became float. All right, so any number that contains decimal point is a float. It's a float data type. They also support arithmetic operations. All right, they support arithmetic operations. So we'll talk about arithmetic operations later on in this separate chapter. Then we also have string. A string is a sequence of characters that is enclosed in either single quote or double quote or triple single quote or triple double quote. I mentioned it in previous section, but don't worry, we are still going to study string as a chapter and we are going to dissect this string. Okay, so name is equal to Alice, and you see it is in double quote. So anything in double quote or single quote is a string. Message hello world is in single quote is a string. So when you print this thing, you're going to, the data type is string, okay? So you can access characters by using their indices, okay? But don't worry about this. We are going to dissect string as a chapter and we're going to discuss a whole lot of things about it. But for now, let's just go on, okay? So string supports concatenation. You can also, you can concatenate, there's something we call concatenation and repetition. I'm not going to go into details about this. When we talk about string, we'll talk about string concatenation. But what it means is this. You can say, look at it, we have first and last. And first has hello and last has what? If I say first plus last, I'm going to get hello world. But if you see what they did there, they are saying first plus, then they not put, okay, let me show you. Let me show you this. I have first equal to hello, okay? And I have last equal to, I'm using a single quote here, equal to word. So if I say, um, first, last, okay? If I do something like this, if I say first plus last, this is what we call string concatenation. I am saying, I'm taking the first variable and I'm saying plus the last variable. So this is very, very possible, okay? This is very, very possible. And if I print this thing, look at what we are going to get. We are going to get, if I print this variable first, last, so we are going to get hello world with no space in between. You see, there's no space in between. But if I want to add space, I can also come and say first plus, I will add a space, then plus last. Because this is a string, this space is also a string. So if I run this now, I'm going to get hello, then there's a space between two of them. Do you understand? Okay. So I can also say, I want to repeat this. I could also say, I want to repeat this repeated first. So I want to repeat this first value. I will say multiplication multiplied by 3. I want to repeat the hello into 3. So if I go on and say repeated first, all right, it will give me hello into 3 hellos. Okay. So, but look at what I'm doing here. Let me take this one out. I am doing multiplication. So this is called repetition. string repetition. I have shown you string concatenation. I'm showing you string repetition now. I have this first, and remember, this first is a variable that contains hello as the data. So I'm now saying I want to repeat it 3 times. So I will now use this star. I will say first. Now this star is the multiplication symbol. I will say first times 3. It will give me hello world into 3 times. But in case I want space in between them, all I have to do is I will now come here and put space here. So if I run this code now, I will have hello space hello hello. Do you understand? Okay. So, but don't worry, we are going to talk about string in more details later on. So we have done string concatenation and string repetition. Okay, this is how you concatenate and this is how you do repetition. So I have shown you multi-line strings. I showed you this in previous session. Okay, and don't worry, we are still going to repeat it again. But here we are using triple quotes. Either we are using the single triple quote or we are using the double triple quote. So if you want to write text in multi-lines, you use the triple quotes. Refer to the previous sessions that were discussing, but don't worry, we'll still talk about it in a later session when we start talking about strings. So Boolean represents true or false. So if you have any data that is either true or false, yes or no, that will just have these 2 values, you will represent them in a Boolean like this. So is it either true or false? Is Python fun? It's either yes or no. So it's either true or false. Is math hard? It's either true or false. Okay, so when you print out, the data type of it is going to be a Boolean. Okay, so you have seen this thing severally. Okay. All right. So type conversion, you can convert from one data type to another data type. Okay. Let's say you can convert between different data types using built-in functions. So the built-in function for converting anything to an integer is int function. We have for float, we have for string, and we have for Boolean. So if I have something like this, I have this number enclosed in string. So since I have a number inside of it. If I want to convert this 100 that is a string to an integer, I will use the int function. Okay, so let me show you in code here. So if I say num is equal to 100, you see, this 100 is actually a number, but it is enclosed in a string. So the data type is actually a string. But if I want to convert it, okay, I will say int number is equal to, I will now say int, which is the function. I'll open the parentheses and put in the name of the variable. So because this num variable is a string, but it is likely a number that is a string. So if I convert this now and then I'll print the int number variable, I'm now going to get an integer, not a string. So if I now say, give me the type, what is the data type of this int number? It's going to give me integer. You see, because I have converted this number to integer using this int function. But if I say give me the data type of num, the data type of num is string because it's enclosed in double quote. All right. But here I converted that value to an integer, then I save the value in int num. Okay. So if I also want to convert to float, I will use the float. Do you understand? I will use the float. And if I run this now, the int number is not going to be a float data type. Okay, so this is how you convert. You use the float function or the integer function or the string function. But what happens if I have ABC? You can see even if I convert this thing to an integer now, there is no way ABC can be an integer. We succeeded in the other one because 100 can be an integer. So if I try to run this thing now, we are going to get an error. You see, we got an error because ABC can never be an integer. So you can only convert strings to integers when their value is a possible number in an integer. Okay, so you see, we can get an error here. So this is not possible. But if it was 1,100 inside of this double quote, it is possible. So this is how you convert. You just get the data type, put in float like this or integer, okay? And if you want to convert to a boolean, you will just convert bool to a num, okay? You just put in the value. So, but don't worry, we are going to have extensive sessions on each of these data types. We'll talk about integer in entirely. We'll talk about float, bool. We'll talk about them extensively so that you can understand a whole lot of things about them. Okay, so examples of type conversion. When you say Boolean zero, when you try to convert a zero number to a Boolean, it will give you false. Remember that false has integer value of zero. So when you say Boolean, you want to convert Boolean. Let me show you. I have, if I say num is equal to zero, and I want to convert this num to a Boolean, so I will say Boolean is equal to, if I want to convert this number to Boolean, I'll say bool function, and I'll put in the num variable inside. So when I run this code now, if I print Boolean, it is actually going to give me what? False, because zero will give us false. But if I change this number to one, all right, Boolean, this Boolean will not give us true. So remember, zero is false, one is true. So when you convert them, you're going to get true or false. Okay, so but when you try to see that same error we got the other time. Okay, when you try to convert a string like this into an integer to give you false. Okay, so I've also shown you how to check data types of variables. So you just use the type function and put in the variable name inside of the parentheses, and it will give you the data type. Okay. All right, so there's also something we call constants in Python. Constants are variables whose values should not change. You know, when you have pi is 3.14, it can never change. It's a constant value. So whenever in your program you have values that will not be changing in your program, you would create them as constants. So Python does not have a built-in const keyword. Instead, we use uppercase variable names by convention. In other programming languages like JavaScript, if you use const is a keyword I used to create constant. But in Python, there is no keyword for creating a constant. But the thing is that if you want to create a constant, you will have to give the variable name to be all capital letters, uppercase letters. So with this now, Python knows that this is a constant because it is all in cap, in uppercase. Say gravity, they are all in capital letters. So Python will see this thing as a constant. So Python will not allow you to change this value. So let's go to the website and write some code. So I'm going to say pi is equal to 3.14. Imagine if I try to change pi again to, let's see if we get any error. And I will now say print pi. If I run this, okay. Now, you see, um, because if it is JavaScript that I created a constant and I'm trying to change the value, JavaScript will see it as an error. But for here, Python is not seeing it as an error. So you just have to be careful when you're working with it. But whenever you have any variable that is capital letter, it is Python sees it as a constant, and it is a value that wouldn't be changing during the course of your program. So key takeaways, Python is a dynamically typed language. It means that you can change the values of a variable to different data types. Okay, but for other languages like C# or C++, you cannot do that. If you have a variable that is a string data type, and later on you are now assigning an integer value to that variable, C# will flag it as an error. So variables are assigned using this equal to operator. Don't worry, we'll talk about operators and you're going to see more. You can check the types of your variable using the type function, and you can convert data types using the int, the float, the string, or the Boolean functions. All you have to do is to put in the variable inside of this parenthesis and they will convert it to you. But don't worry, we are going to be seeing, when we start writing pure code, we are going to be seeing these conversions done, okay? But for now, just understand that you can do conversions. So for use uppercase names for your constants, okay? Thank you very much. And in case you find something confusing here, please reach out to us, okay? And we'll explain more to you, okay? And we'll see you in the next session.